So in today's session, we're going to talk about how Agile is really used in industry today. We're going to talk about how, if Agile is associated with more successful projects, does Agile lead to more successful projects? And we'll discuss what project characteristics and moderators impact this relationship. What types of projects, what areas of project management, what project characteristics really affect whether you should use Agile or not. And which types of projects are more successful in the using Agile methodologies. The majority of this talk comes from a paper that I did with Jeffrey Pinto from Penn State, titled "Does Agile Work? Quantitative Analysis of Project Success." I'll first talk a little bit of background on Agile, and then I'll get right into the research and the findings that we had from that paper. So we'll have is how new is Agile? It's a new breakthrough, right? It's something that just came around, and everything was very different beforehand. Some people have told me though, I was managing projects back in the 60s. We used to do stand-up meetings. We used to replan when necessary. Agile's not all that new. If you read back into literature in 1958, Kuntz wrote that no effective manager makes a plan and proceeds to put it in effect regardless of what events occur. So I think it's always been known that good project management involves some replanning, maybe some evolutionary changes, and not a straight, plan and finish the project as planned and that's it. It goes a bit further back. Well, here you go. Publius Syrus in 100 BC said it is a bad plan that admits of no modification. So there you go. Again, maybe it's not this idea of evolving, of changing, of being open to changes is not necessarily all that new. But it also shows you that it's probably been right for a long time. Agile. So evolved in the mid-90s as part of a reaction against heavyweight methods. In that time, there was the thought, potentially due to the issue of too much project failure in IT, that it was necessary to really add tight methodologies, detailed documentation, careful planning to all projects, and that was the way to improve project success. There were some problems. In that time, there were projects that ground to a halt because people were spending all their time doing documentation and weren't doing any coding, and they weren't actually executing the project. They were spending all their time in process, documentation, review, and that was seen as a big problem. So there were writers who suggested that, in fact, it was better to do an adaptive software development process. Edmonds wrote in 1974 about that. And then Scrum was written about in 1995, Crystal Clear and Extreme Programming, 1996, and ASDM, or FDD, and DSDM, 1995. Now, Agile methodologies, after the Agile Manifesto published in 2001. But the Agile Manifesto was actually published a few years after those initial methodologies, more than 6 years after Scrum. And some of these authors formed the Agile Alliance, and that's your nonprofit organization that promotes Agile today. The concerns about methodologies in the world of IT, and first the very heavy methodologies. I guess the old RUP may be an example. Other rational unified process, other types of very detailed, process-oriented methodologies with many artifacts and many documents, was probably a reaction to things like the chaos report. For example, in 2000, the chaos report is something produced by the Standish Group, a consulting company. And they have been publishing over many years that there have been large numbers of failed projects in IT. And in fact, the majority of projects in IT fail. In 2000, these numbers. So only 28% of the projects that they studied were delivered on time, within budget, and with the features requested. People may quibble with these numbers and say, you know, their methodologies is fairly tight. You know, criticism has been made that if a project has a change request, has scope increased, has a budget increased, and it's considered overrun according to Standish, even though the change may have nothing to do with the project execution and maybe a change that everybody wanted, and in fact the project was successful and was delivered, it would still fall in this failure category. So it may not quite be that bad, but I think that many of us have seen failed projects, and many of us have heard of failed projects in the IT world. So it is a problem, and it's something that as project managers in the IT world, we want to strive to make better. Now, just to level set about some of our discussions here, we'll be talking about the old 4-stage project phase. So you have phase 1, conceptualization or initiation, phase 2, planning, execution, and phase 4, termination or closeout. So I think that applies to as much to Agile as it does to any other type of project. We refer to these stages as we go. The planning phase we'll talk about, and it's something like what some people refer to as iteration 0, the time before you start iterations, before you start the full Agile processes, when you define some of the other requirements, the goals of the project, and really lay out the groundwork for your iterations. Another bit that impacts the success of Agile is defects. So it's been known for a while that finding defects early is beneficial to a project's success, both in terms of time and budget. Each costs a little bit more, right? If you find a problem in the requirements phase, you just have to modify a requirements document. If you find the problem in the design phase, you have to modify a requirements document and a design document. In coding, you have to modify the code, design document, and requirements document potentially. And the most expensive, of course, is after a project is delivered, because you find a problem after the project is delivered. Not only do you have to do all that work again, but you may have to generate an entire new project to redesign, recode, and redeploy that one fix. Poston, wrote in 1995, the cost of a defect is more and more the further you go on in a project. And when it gets to operations, who knows? Maybe it's going to have the cost of restarting a new project to fix a defect. Maybe it's going to impact company reputation. Maybe it's going to impact product sales and company valuations. You don't know. It can be very, very serious.